gotta know the truth, Charlie.
This is Stu Webb, federal whistleblower, the new host of Veterans Today Radio News Reports, Monday right here on Revolution Radio. My guests are writers and contributors to veteranstoday.com, the #1 alternative media magazine in the world and the true voice of the world's clandestine community. We will be discussing recent articles that deal with government corruption, politics, military, Illuminati, and world events that affect your lives and what you can do to change the direction of America. So tune in to the Veterans Today Radio News Reports every Monday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Studio B here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Thank you.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping off cameras in your face?
Those root weevils write history.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven, Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another?
Extra big-ass fries.
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
Come
trouble.
on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our Seed Pack Special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
From the corrupt corridors of Wall Street to the lords of the City of London, from the gold markets of the Pacific Rim and the Far East, comes the Guerrilla Economist. He clears the fog of economic and geopolitical disinfo. Know the truth, see the trends, understand the players. Protect your future and family. The financial freedom fighter, a rebel with a cause. This worldwide transmission has been brought to you by the Guerrilla Economist, helping the world understand, prepare, and make sound decisions to protect your future and your family. Visit the Guerrilla Economist at roguemoney.net, spelt ROGUEMONEY.net, for additional information and services.
You're listening to Revolution Radio.
All right, folks, it's the Guerrilla Economist. Today is Friday, November the 14th, 2014. And tonight is the night. Tonight is the night we're going to be rocking and rolling on the show. First, let me just say that you are listening to me live on freedomslips.com. We are the preeminent listener-supported radio on the internet, Revolution Radio. Click the Donate Now button on the main screen and even in the chat room box. Put your money where your ears are, folks. Support the show. Support the hosts that are on this program. We have big corporate budgets. We look to guys and the average person on the road to support us in this endeavor, and we ask that you do that, folks. Tonight's going to be an awesome night, and let me tell you this: if you get positive effects from caffeine, if you get nothing but awesome effects from drinking coffee, I recommend you get caffeinated, you get plugged in, and you listen to this show. Because tonight, it's all coming out. Tonight, the gloves are coming off. Tonight, we are going to drive an absolute stake through the heart of this monster and expose it for what it is. All of you listening in, you've heard about the Federal Reserve System. You've heard guys like Greg, who's going to be on in a little bit, and a special guest who's going to be coming on as well, 10 minutes past the hour. You've heard about the DTCC. You've heard about the mortgage fraud. You've heard about how bogus stock market is. You've heard about that you cannot really own anything. We're going to take it to the next level because tonight, folks, we are naming names. We're pulling the absolute curtain back and exposing this monstrosity for what it is. So you guys are in for a special treat tonight. Excuse me. I'm still getting over the last remaining bits of my cold from last week, so bear with me. But I am fired up. I am fired up because this has been years in the making, and it had to be this way. This is a divine ordination that you guys are listening to this radio show. It is divine ordination that this radio show has come to be and has been put in a position that we are the ones breaking this information, folks. This audience will be the first to hear it. You have not heard this anywhere. I might have made some blurbs and bleeps here and there throughout the past week or so about hinting as to what it is all about. But tonight, you guys are going to understand. You guys are going to see it. I recommend you get some coffee or Red Bull. I recommend you get a notebook. I recommend you get a pen and paper and you listen in, because tonight you're about to go to school. Tonight you're going to learn what it's all about. And folks, I am pumped up for this, because tonight is the night that not only are you going to be listening to information, but now you're going to be participating in a revolution. And what I mean by that is this. You know what an activist is? And me and one of the guests, Greg, we were talking about this back and forth. An activist is somebody who just, I don't know, maybe goes to his local Starbucks, sits around and whines and complains and talks about, oh, what's wrong with the government? What's wrong with the country? That's an activist. An activist is, he puts a billboard on his front and back and writes a little fancy saying and walks around. That's an activist. An actionable revolutionary is somebody who actually takes action. And that's what we're going to do. Folks, we were going to have some incredible information that's going to be brought out tonight. On top of that, we're going to provide a vehicle and an avenue for you to stand up and be heard in this mission that we are all flying together in. You're going to be a participant in what we're about to do. And this is our chance to create change. Folks, you cannot control what happened in Benghazi. You cannot control LIBOR. Okay, you cannot control the criminal, fraudulent actions in the gold market. You cannot control the criminal behavior of your politicians. You cannot control these corporations that are out of control. But there is one leverage that we have, that we still have. And they've done a masterful job eviscerating the Constitution. They've done a wonderful job getting our focus away from things that matter and focusing on unimportant things and unimportant people. They've done a masterful job getting our minds enamored by the bread and circus. They've done a wonderful job distracting us, at the same time gutting the very thing that this republic stands for. But tonight we're going to exploit. We're going to show you, and we're going to show you the only exploit that you as an average citizen has. The power is in your hands. These elitists would like you to think that you are powerless, that you can't make a difference, that your vote doesn't count. And some level of that, we all know about voter fraud. I'm not talking about that. They want to make you feel powerless. You're a hapless, laissez-faire victim who just floats through life. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. And that's what they want you to think. I'm here to tell you you're not. I'm here to tell you, and the men that are with me tonight are here to tell you that you are not. That you are powerful. That you can make a difference. Look into the person you love. Look into their eyes. Look into the eyes of your children tonight. Look into the eyes of your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever it is. Look into your own eyes. Understand you're not some washed up mass. Understand that you are powerful. That you are greater than your mere earth suit, your little meat suit that your consciousness is trapped in. You're greater than that. And rise up. All of us, whether you're a man or a woman, all of us in our most basal instinct is to be a warrior. Is to be a warrior. Our basal instinct is to protect our tribe. And folks, let me tell you what our tribe is. There's only one race on this planet, and that is the human race. We all have different ethnic expressions, but we are one family. And we have been struggling against a group of infiltrators for the last many thousand years. And now it's time that the gloves come off. It's time that we begin to show you the system of enslavement. Tonight's the night, folks. Without further ado, I think we have our guests on. I'm going to have Greg Moores. He's going to be on tonight. Anybody who's been following the Guerrilla knows I've put Greg on this show 3 times because his information is important. The man, I call him the J.R.R. Tolkien of finance. And I'm not talking about that because he writes fanciful tales. I said that because the man has incredible, excruciating detail. And detail that you need to take and drive it into your very core of who you are so that it elicits change inside of you, causes you to take action. The next man that I have, my special guest, and by the grace of God, the way things happened, by the grace of God, Greg was able to get a hold of him, and my buddy W told me 3-4 weeks ago, hey, you need to get a hold of this guy. And then Greg was able to get a hold of him. His name is Scott Bennett. Lieutenant Scott Bennett. He's a U.S. Army Special Operations Officer from the 11th Psychological Operations Battalion, Civil Affairs Psychological Operations Command. And he's a global psychological warfare counterterrorism analyst, formerly with the defense contractor Bose Allen Hamilton. He received a direct commission as an officer, held a top-secret, sensitive, compartmentalized information security clearance, and worked in the highest level of international counterterrorism in Washington, D.C. and MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida. He has worked at the U.S. Special Operations Command, United States Central Command, the United States State Department Coordinator for Counterterrorism, and other governmental agencies. He served in the George W. Bush administration from 2003 to 2008, and he was a social science research fellow at the Heritage Foundations. His writings and lectures seek to enhance global awareness and the understanding of the modern psychological warfare and international intelligence. In other words, folks, Scott Bennett was the man on top of the totem pole on a very, very important mission. He was set out to find and track and hunt down terrorist financing. And I'm not going to waste my time detailing it for you. He's going to detail it for you. He's going to flesh out his incredible life story. And just so you know, folks, I have reached out to 4 men exactly, who vouch for Scott's credibility. Okay? One is a gentleman by the name of Dan, who was a major, 30 years in the Army, high-level intelligence officer. I've contacted him. He served and worked with Scott, knew the very place that Scott was in, confirmed it. I spoke with another intel officer who's now somebody working in finance, Rich. He's confirmed it. I talked to another intelligence officer it goes by the name of Van. He also confirmed Scott that he is the real McCoy. I spoke with another intelligence source that confirmed Scott Bennett is Scott Bennett, and he did what he did, and his name is Chip. He's confirmed it. 4 men I have confirmed, vetted, looked through, looked at, put under a microscope everything that Scott Bennett has done. I've looked at the documents. I've seen his work. I've labored these past few days looking at this information. And I will tell you, this man is as legit as it comes, and he is here tonight because he gives a damn. He cares. He's not here tonight to tell you about alien abductions and Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and portals and this, that, and the other nonsense that you have no control over. But he's here to share with you his life story. With that being said, Greg, come on board, sir. How are you?
Good evening, Dan. I'm doing great. How are you?
Greg, I'm pumped up, man. I can't tell the people how pumped up I am because everything we've ever talked about, Greg, everything, you and I, the hours we spent on the phone, has come to this moment.
That's exactly right. This is a big night.
Why don't you detail for the audience, Greg, what they're in for, and why don't you go ahead and tell them a little bit more so you can set it up. Then we'll tee up Scott.
Perfect. I don't want to take too much time because I want you and Scott to be able to get into all of his voluminous information. Let me, for all you listener folks, let me give you the important information. I'm not going to do this in any specific order, so I'm just going to go slow and methodical as I am prone to do so you get it all. Number 1, the email contact to get to me directly and only to me is whistleblowerdefense@yahoo.com. Whistleblowerdefense@yahoo.com. All lowercase, no spaces. Number 2, the website for control and communication between all of us from this night forward is SaveOurFamilyAndHome.com. SaveOurFamilyAndHome.com. If you want to speak to either me or Scott directly, simply send an email to the email address I just outlined. I will contact you and we will set up those phone conversations. We welcome any and all comments, offers for help, criticisms, anything you want to share with us, we would love to hear it. Tonight's purpose is the following. We have a story comprised of 2 parts. The first part comes out of the effort in the 6 years that myself, V, and our research staff, led by Mr. Glenn Gregory, have accomplished. That part of the story regarding the mortgage crisis starts at the point at which you or your potential pretender lender ask for an appraiser to come out and evaluate the property on which your house is located, all the way up the chain of events to the DTCC and Seed and Company involvement on Wall Street and their transfer of funds and relationship through the control of the Federal Reserve by DTCC. That's the start and the end of our part of the story. Because of some very serendipitous events and a lot of blessings from above that came to us about a month ago, Scott Bennett and I, through some very unplanned events, were able to get in touch with each other. Scott's part of the story picks it up where the monies at the Federal Reserve have been transferred offshore, a large portion of which went to the Union Bank of Switzerland, into a number of accounts, many, many tens of thousands accounts, from which those funds were likely redistributed and redirected to fund numerous terrorist activities and U.S. military black operations, the result of which was to send home many of our servicemen and women injured, maimed, or in a body bag. Now, tonight is the kickoff for the petition, which we are asking all of you, your friends, your family members, anyone with whom you can have contact, to urge them to join us in what V and I have attempted to evaluate and research to the best of our individual and collective abilities to find if there was any other party or group anywhere in this nation that was proposing to take this type of dramatic action. Our individual and collective conclusions were in the negative. So we believe that to the best of our knowledge and belief, we believe that all of us involved in this program tonight are involved in the only effort of its type taking place in this country. What is that? We are putting activism aside, and we are moving directly into the paradigm of actionalism, such that we can force the private, public, and governmental individuals and entities who have been either directly involved, responsible for, or co-conspirators in the theft of quadrillions of dollars from our American citizens, a portion of which has been used to contribute to the perpetuation of illegal military events, wars, and police actions that have resulted in the killings of our family members. Here is where we stand on the documentation. We discussed this last week, but this is imperative because we are now going public, and we know that members of Congress, the President, and all the IGs are going to be aware of this because of V's effort. Number one, this effort is being instigated and begun by V, myself, and Scott's very courageous commitment, considering V and I have been at this a long time. Scott is a relative newcomer to this process, but he is such a man of character and courage that he made a blood oath military pact with me, since we're both ex-military, that he was in this with me and V to the death. We mean that. That's not theatrics. You people who have listened to me know I'm no entertainer. I'm no Richard Pryor. Don't plan on being, never could be. I'm just who I am. So those three of us are starting this process, but we must have your courageous support, endorsement, and participation to be able to affect a positive and fortuitous conclusion to this process. Now, the evidence looks like this. We have, on our part, the mortgage crisis part, we have thousands, over 15,000 pages of publicly accessed, corroborated, qualified according to the federal rules of evidence and court admissibility documents giving us the ability to prove, corroborate, and support everything that we said. The problem has been that in the 3.5-year legal battle that we've been conducting under our civil RICO lawsuit, the courts are scared to death of this information. The attorney firms that we're fighting in Birmingham, Alabama, and New York predominantly are likewise scared of it, and they don't want this information to come out. Why? Because there is going to be a tremendous degree of public disclosure, knowledge, and blowback against all of those people who have been involved. And in no small measure, the elected politicians that we have all sent to Washington to do their job, of which they're not doing. Now, we have a tremendous amount of evidence. We've made all of that evidence available on both SaveOurFamilyAndHome.com as well as MortgageEndgame.com. As I have said, Mortgage Endgame is out of date. We're a two-man band. We're paddling the boat as fast as we can go, so we're going to be moving all of that information over to Save Our Family and Home over the next few weeks. The point of it is we've got it. We have disseminated that information to a number of reliable sources such that if anything were to happen to any one of the three of us, the information is not going to go away, and it is not going to therefore hinder or harm your commitment to sign the petition. Second area of concern. Scott has tremendous volumes of evidence which is clearly indicative that it states that, and when Scott tells you the story, you will be just shocked and appalled by the cover-up and the ignoring of his very courageous dissemination of this information to members of the government, agencies, and the military. You will be shocked when you see the degree to which they have ignored him. Now, Scott has tremendous amounts of information, much of which is going to be on the site, just as we always do. We have a show on Friday. All the information's up the next morning. Scott's information will be likewise on SaveOurFamilyAndHome.com. Not all of the information is up there for very specific strategic and self-protection reasons. But the information is there. Neither we or Scott or V, we don't have all the information. Here's why. People who are involved in these criminal activities are not going to give us their private hard drive information unless they are forced to do so, because they would be committing personal suicide by the admission of guilt to those charges which are being alleged, so therefore they're not going to give it to us. You have two ways of getting that information. One, go through the federal legal system. I can only speak for me because I've been up to this to my nose for the last 3.5 years. It is clear to me, irrefutably clear, that the courts and the law firms that are involved in the country club are not going to allow this information to come forth unless the American people come together and force them by momentum and strength to let this information come out. That is why we said this information could very well be larger than Iran-Contra, obviously larger than Watergate. This could be the biggest public uprising and civil, legal, and peaceful republic restoration that's taken place since 1776. That's not high-powered rhetoric. It is the honest-to-God truth. The critical component to that is your willingness to participate and contribute your incremental strength, just as myself and V and Scott and Glenn are contributing our incremental strength, which is no more or less than yours. We all have the same ability to contribute strength to the process. If you folks sign up and then you help by Twittering and retweeting and putting out articles, putting them up on your websites, talking to every single living human being you know in this country to get them to sign on the petition, here's what will happen. We have legally the ability to petition the joint House of Congress to force them to allow us to have open, public, unsequestered, unsealed, media-covered, joint House congressional hearings and testimony. When that happens, what we have effectively done is we have forced those people who wear robes and control the corrupt legal system, that's my opinion, we force them to let this information come forth. Now, whenever you are involved in a deeply, technically complex research process, you never are able to get all of the information, since that information is not all within your grasp. I have said that every time we've had this conversation. We don't have it all, but we have, as does Scott, well more than the preponderance of information necessary to force these unethical and criminal people. They're not all criminal. Some of them are just incompetent, but I don't believe most people in Washington are incompetent. It's possible. I don't buy it. I'm just an old Texas country boy fighter pilot, literally. And I do not believe that those people are incompetent. I believe that they have been bought off and corrupted. I believe that they're very smart people. If you study the criminal mind in the area of study referred to as criminology, you will find that the best criminals are always the smartest ones. And here's where they typically fall down. Their ego gets in the way. Their hubris bothers them to where they're tired of being so good at what they do, that is perpetuating criminal behavior, that they've got to have somebody pat them on the back. They've got to be told, man, you're really good at what you do. That's when they screw up, and that's where we got them. They cannot refute this information. Myself, Scott, Glenn Gregory, and a very long laundry list that I will not disclose on the radio for protection of those people. And secondly, we don't want the Congress knowing who we're going to walk in on that congressional floor with witnesses as to what their identities are in advance, until we have to disclose to the sergeant at arms and the clerks and the secretary of the Senate as to who those people are. There is no way, unless they shoot us all, there's no way that this evidence can be debunked, shoved under the carpet, or otherwise made to go away unless they openly show a criminally intended hand and agenda. So we don't have to have, and make sure you hear me, we don't have all the evidence, but we've got way more than that which is required to demand these congressional hearings. Now, if we get those hearings, Then you'll get the rest of the information as to who was the guy that signed every check or authorized every wire transfer. Where did it go to? Did it go to Jordan or Pakistan or Libya, wherever the heck it went? And who actually was the beneficial receiver of those funds that were used to kill our servicemen and women? Here is the repugnant, beyond my ability to describe conclusion. We have had our homes decimated, our money stolen, our integrity challenged. They took that money, they put it through the hidden, corrupt stock market system to turn billions into quadrillions. And then they have turned around, they have lied to the American people, as it's now clearly evidenced on the public record. We instigated, we trained, we have funded, and we have supported, starting back in the 80s, Mr. Osama bin Laden, and then the Mujahideen, which came forward into being rebranded as Al-Qaeda or Al-Qaeda. We're told on 911 that Al-Qaeda was the perpetrator. They're the bad guys. Isn't it interesting to find that the FBI on their 10 most wanted list never listed Osama bin Laden for his reputed involvement in 911? Isn't it interesting now that the very group known by the same name that supposedly attacked us on 911 as our most despicable enemy, we're now funding those people? I bet if you are a family member of a military serviceman or woman who has come home injured, maimed, or dead, I am sure this already has resonated in your hearts and your grief for years. Here's the conclusion, V. If you will go to SaveOurFamilyAndHome.com, on the top of every page, there is a huge red button that describes the petition. All you do is click on that button. When you click on the button, it's going to take you to a page that shows you exactly what the petition is and what it says. You fill in the information, you read the disclosure directions and constraints, and you're on the petition, and God bless you for it. Now, the petition is done in concert with a petitioner's letter. If you will go to, just as an example, go to the homepage, you will see on the left-hand side there are a number of blue icons. This is important because we've done the best we possibly could to make it simple for you, the listener, and the petitioner to make this happen. We have offered for your perusal under the title of Petitioner's Letter. If you click on that, there is a letter that we have drafted which you can read. If you like our letter, please feel free to follow the instructions. You can download it. We've given you, under icons on the left side of the page, the addresses for all of the House of Representatives addresses, all the Inspector General's addresses, and all of the U.S. Senators' addresses. You don't have to search for anything. It's all there for you. All you do is copy-paste it or manually type it in on the letter, put a stamp on it, and mail it. If you don't like that letter, please feel free to do whatever letter you want. We have included in this letter, it's a very hard-hitting letter. I pull no punches because, as B said, we are going in their face. This is not time for reticent, politically correct, or cowardly behavior. This is a fight. This is a fight to reinstitute our constitutional republic. Please go to the site. Please investigate all of the icons I hope that you will find it simple. If I can do it, which I can, then anybody else should be able to do it, because I'm no IT genius. But it works simply. Please sign the petition. Please start writing letters to your congressmen, to your senators, to the inspectors general that we discussed in quite some detail last week, and let them know that you've had enough. We need to get millions of signatures on this petition. There is nothing not disclosed. Everything's on the website, exactly what it says, exactly how it's going to be administratively dealt with and submitted to the Congress. When we are ready and have enough signatures, here's what the protocol is going to be. Myself, Scott Bennett, Glenn Gregory is the lead researcher, who without him, we wouldn't have all this information. I'm not going to go into his military ops background, etc., for his own security, but without Glenn, and I must say this as a disclosure, every piece of information we have ever uncovered has been done so legally, in accordance with law, and no laws of any kind have been broken, no confidentialities or firewalls have been broken, no websites have been tampered with or hacked. All of this information is available to anybody who is a competent and motivated researcher. So none of our research can be challenged, debunked, or thrown out of the Congress because someone claims that because we have a degree of IT skill that we hack somebody's website. That has never happened. And I stand ready for somebody to challenge us on that, and I'll be ready to affidavit and shove it right back where the sun doesn't shine. So we have done everything we know to make sure that the credibility and the integrity of this evidence has been protected and maintained. Please contact all your friends, your family members. Please sign on board with us. Please help us work to save our constitutional republic before it's too late. I look forward to hearing from you. God bless all of you. And V, thanks for having me on the show, because without you, my friend, none of this would happen. I'm not blowing smoke at you. Yeah, I love you. Yeah, you know my goods and my flaws. Flaws probably outweigh the goods, but I'll tell you what. We could have all the ideas, the motivation, but without your leadership and without your platform, none of this would happen. It'd be like going to the drag race with a top fuel dragster and have no slicks on the back, and you make a lot of noise, you wouldn't go anywhere. So God bless you and God protect you.
All right, folks, that was Greg Moores. Again, the site is saveourfamilyandhome.com. Just click on the petition, sign it, stand up and be heard. Now it's time to get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to go into the details, so put on your seatbelts. A lot of you are waiting and listening in. At this time, I'm going to call to the dais the pit bull that I call Scott Bennett. Scott, are you there, sir?
I am there. Thank you so much.
Scott, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you on. And you know what? I've done the introduction for you earlier in the show. There's no need to get into it. You are who you say you are. You are the man. So, sir, the dais is totally yours. Go for it. Detail this thing out and rip back the curtain on this monster.
Yeah, well, let me jump right in and present this as sort of a military briefing, and I'm going to keep it as factual and straight to the point as possible, and jump right in. And let me just start out by saying, one, I'm so impressed and humbled by your courage and your boldness to get even these discussions out there. I mean, the whole world of these sort of internet radio productions is truly, I mean, such a blessing to this country, because it's the only way that real people of character are going to hear and be advised and receive the intellectual, ordinance that they need to begin to take back the country and protect freedom and things that that very few of us seem to be recognizing that we've somewhat lost. I mean, a lot of people have been boiled slowly in the hot water, and your show is sort of throwing cold water on them to wake them up, and I applaud that. And I also have to say it's such a blessing to have met Greg, because a master of finance and the legal material and documentation associated with this case is just mesmerizing. And to read his material and see this, I mean, I'm humbled because I'm discovering material that I honestly had never really seen before. And I come from a terrorist background, counterterrorism, PSYOP background, defense contracting, that whole realm, that also went into the terrorist finance realm. So to link up and see what Greg and you have examined and exposed and peeled back the curtain is incredible for me, because it's dotting the I's and crossing the T's of a lot of stuff that I saw happening and I was raising questions about. So to see it really is, I mean, an act of God, and I'm so thankful that it's happening this way, because it is an act of God. You can see the divine appointment of all these people coming together, and these facts and these truths and these issues. It is really coming to a fruition, and we just have to be honest and faithful and move forward in the direction that we feel ourselves pulled in. So I'm just going to share what direction I feel being pulled in, and be as honest and open as I can, in the hopes that it's going to inspire and give people what they've been waiting to hear and waiting to know about. Let me start jumping in real quick. As Greg was kind of talking about, this is something that's just starting to come together now, but there are a lot of parties that are probably going to try and shut this down. The phone may get cut off. We may have to reconnect, because this has happened a few times, very strangely. So let me put out some other contact information. First of all, everything is very true. Go right through Greg's website that he's mentioned in the beginning. But let me also give this alternative contact in case any websites are shut down. And my email is armypsyop@outlook.com, armypsyop@outlook.com, and PSYOP is spelled PSYOP. So it's armypsyop@outlook.com. And the office number is 925-391-0407. I put that out there because I know people who really are worth something and matter and are on the side of right and truth. I want you to have that information in case it can be useful and you need it. For the bad guys out there who are challenging freedom and are in league with the police state and the Gestapo intelligence that is sort of stifling our freedom, I really don't care, because as I've said before, I fear no man, and I'm in this to the death, and I'm not backing down, and I'm charging forward in obedience to my oath to the Constitution, in obedience to my oath as an officer of the United States Army, as someone whose father was a Vietnam veteran, a aviator, fighter pilot in Vietnam, who flew 201 missions in 6 months, which is like a mission a day, more than anybody really in modern history, and with uncles and grandparents from a long line of military history. I'm following through on my oath as an officer of the United States Army. So that's the contact information. Let me jump right into, well, you've already talked a little bit about my credentials, training, background, and character. Anybody with interest in examining me further and looking at this, you can go to the website www.armypsyop.wix.com/Scott Bennett. And I'm sure, V, you'll have this on your website, not anything like that. So you can always get to me and Greg through his website, which he's put in the beginning of the show, saveourfamilies.com. But this has kind of come together accidentally and miraculously. My original story, as I've just put out, I'm from California. I moved out to Washington, D.C. in 1998. Worked in the Bush administration, got my master's degree, got my PhD, worked from the Bush administration, had also been at the Heritage Foundation, jumped and was offered a position in Booz Allen Hamilton. Booz Allen Hamilton is one of the biggest defense contractors in the world that goes back about 60 years and is one of the blueprint architects of all the major government agency apparatus. Booz Allen Hamilton designed Homeland Security. It designed a lot of the Patriot Act agencies and operations that we have. I came out of the Bush administration bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I had moved out to Washington to sort of address a lot of the liberalism that I saw being problematic and destructive to our families, to our heritage, and I didn't like it, so I moved out to sort of do battle in that regard. And I joined in the conservative parties and the Republicans and got wrapped up into that. And then joined Booz Allen Hamilton after the Bush administration, went into defense contracting, largely because my background in my academic studies had been in psychological operations, economic development, and I knew everything about Islam and had studied it and the writers and had language proficiencies. So Booz Allen Hamilton had caught wind of me through a military event that I'd gone to in the Pentagon, and I had come under the notice of a man named Colonel Jeff Jones. Colonel Jeff Jones was the 4th Pod Commander, the 4th Psychological Operations Group Commander, and he had approached me and said, I want you to join my team. I'm putting together an eclectic band of guys looking to do counterterrorism, psychological warfare. And I said, well, that sounds like what I want to do. I'll jump right in. And I had been encouraged by Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld and General Myers at the time to enlist and also go in and become a military officer. So I joined Booz Allen Hamilton, and Booz Allen Hamilton, Colonel Jeff Jones, was a maverick. He was very, very creative, very smart, and he was dedicated to winning the war. A lot of the things that we've seen about 9/11 and a lot of the shenanigans that have been uncovered, the real stories of what have happened, I won't go into here, but let it just be heard that Colonel Jones recognized a lot of the shenanigans and the problems that were going on involving the Brzezinski people and Kissinger and Dov Zakheim and a lot of these names that were instrumental in a lot of this funny business. So Colonel Jones had brought me on and said, I'm going to make you liaison officer for State Department Counterterrorism and Special Operations Command, and we're going to train you and deploy you in a variety of creative capacities. My background was in advertising, so I knew everything about target audience, messaging, psychological profiling, things like that. So I started this journey. Now, I started this journey as a man really just driven to solve the problem, end the war, and settle down some of the fires of these Islamic extremist savages that I was told were crashing planes into buildings and beheading people. And soon after going through State Department training and operations, I was given a direct commission in the Army. And I went into the Army and got trained, was an officer, and came out, and I was then hired by Dov Zakheim. Everyone will recognize that name, Dov Zakheim.
That's the guy that's on the 9/11 omission report, correct? The dual
right.
citizen?
That's exactly right. Dov Zakheim was my boss. Dov Zakheim was the Undersecretary of Defense who misplaced supposedly $2.3 trillion that apparently went to some Israel purchasing of various ordnance components. But Dov Zakheim hired me to come down and be part of his terrorist threat finance team at MacDill Air Force Base. Now, again, as Greg said, none of this material is classified. There's a lot of material that I won't discuss, that I won't go into, out of respect to my TSSCI clearance. But this material is not classified, and the further information is not classified. I've been very careful in that. And Dov Zakheim hired me to come down to U.S. Central Command at MacDill and do counterterrorism threat finance operations. And I said, sure. And I went down. Now, again, none of them had worked with me. None of them knew me. I was sort of a name that was planted up in McLean, Virginia, and based on my credentials and my background in academics, they wanted to bring me down. I think they thought that I was just going to toe the line. I think they thought he's just like one of our regular Booz Allen Hamilton worker bees. But they couldn't be more wrong, because I didn't join the defense contracting industry to get rich or have a 30-year job and to live the fat life. I went in simply to move forward in the natural progression of what I felt was sort of God's calling and leading me through my political work, my education work, and now I was going into the defense contracting realm because we had been in a war since 2001, And I knew I could contribute things intellectually and temperamentally that no one else had, and it was my duty to give that to my country in order to win the war, in order to save lives and stop our young men and women from dying. So I went in to be an officer to do that, and pursued a placement. And Dov Zakheim and these guys, I don't think they recognize that, but they did come to recognize it very shortly, because next thing I found myself going down to U.S. Central Command at MacDill, where I went into counterterrorism threat finance training and went into every finance, bank, courier, Hawala, every institution that was associated with terrorists and their money supplies, and went through extensive training.
All right, Scott, hold that thought. Hold that thought, Scott.
Sure.
We've got a hard break coming up. Folks, you're listening to V, the Guerrilla Economist. This is the Major Disclosure Night. And Scott, when we come back, I want you to hit up on the details. Folks, stay right there.
Listening to Revolution Radio.
Imagine. Just imagine.
Imagine a world
where every child and adult will have the opportunity to achieve their dreams.
I believe my inspiration is the answer.
My inspiration is the greatest light.
The greatest energy.
It was born when the universe was sparked to life.
It's within everything.
My inspiration transforms pain into happiness
and failure into success.
My inspiration inspires lives.
It inspires lives.
It inspires human lives.
My inspiration is always shining like the sun.
But it doesn't mean that it's alive.
For centuries, my inspiration was in prison.
In prison.
In prison.
It doesn't belong there.
Its home is to be known to all people.
My inspiration is in trouble.
We are fighting for its life right now.
Right this moment.
This moment.
Millions all over the world want to go beyond their limitations.
Liberate their dreams and reach success. The failure of us all to be someone
is the biggest disease
of all time.
Each day our brothers and sisters died. Please help us to birth this inspiration to life.
And that will stop this disease.
Help us get the word out of our inspiration.
Help us.
Help us.
It's our shared belief for a better future beyond the horizon. Let's write the future.
Heroism is here.
Stand up and grasp it.
Stand up.
Stand up and grasp it.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up. For the dreams of all people.
This is Nighthawk from Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and now is your time to stand up and make a difference or fade away.
Hello, everyone. Lori and Fenton here, the host of the Fenton Perspective, to tell you about the first annual JFK Assassination Conference coming up November 22nd through 24th in Arlington, Texas. It's going to be the biggest JFK conference ever held. Producer Judith Ferry Baker, Lee Harvey Oswald's lover, has gathered the who's who of JFK researchers and authors, including Jim Marrs, Dr. James Fetzer, Jerome Corsi, Ed Haslam, Philip Nelson, and 25 others. Our MC is John B. Wells, and we'll have a special appearance by Jesse Ventura that you won't want to miss. And the best part? Free admission to all 3 days of presentations. So join me at the first annual JFK Assassination Conference. You'll leave knowing the truth about what really happened on the day that changed America. Visit jfkconference.com. That's jfkconference.com.
Enjoy your
extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another?
Extra big-ass fries.
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
Come
trouble.
on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
What do you think it is? I don't know. Whatever it is.
Welcome. Now, fair more, gentlemen.
Join me, Joe Kiernan, and Dr. J every Sunday from 10 p.m. Eastern to midnight for Researchers on a Mission Radio. We will be interviewing guests in ufology, experts on the paranormal, and stories from you, the listener. Every Sunday, 10 p.m. in Studio B. Join us for some amazing conversations and edge-of-your-seat true thrillers.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Studio B, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday nights. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to
your host.
All right, folks, it's V, the Guerrilla Economist, coming to you live. Want to thank you for listening to this explosive broadcast. I also want to urge you folks to support us at freedomslips.com. This is the only radio station in the world right now that is disclosing this information. You can click the Donate Now button on the chat room box, also on the home screen. And folks, listen, one of the greatest things that we have is our archive section. You could join it. It's only $5 a month. It helps support the cost of running this station. We have millions of people, literally millions, 2, 3, 4 million, listening in, and that we have absolutely broke pretty much the bandwidth. We've hit the absolute limit of all bandwidth for this show. So there's right now listeners that can't even get on and be able to listen right now because there are millions bombarding it worldwide. Okay? This is huge. So one of the best ways to share this information is to join the archive section. It's $5 a month. It supports the cost of running this station, folks. And on top of that, you can download the broadcast. You could share it with your friends and family members. You could also help support the station by getting a seed pack. It's a non-GMO heirloom seed pack or 54 varieties of fruits and veggies. It's a great for your garden. Help you to start eating more naturally, much cleaner. And also click on the ads. Heck, clicking on the ads that's on our home screen helps with getting the station running. Okay, so with that being said, I want to bring back our guests, Greg and also Scott. Scott's going to detail some things. So, folks, this hour, Scott's going to get into the details now. He described who he is. He described what he did. Now he's going to get into the meat and potatoes on everything. Scott, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Scott. I want you to really talk about your time from Tampa onwards. You got down to Tampa. They put Booz Allen Hamilton put you down in Tampa. They hit you with trumped-up charges. Talk about what you discovered. Talk about the details, man. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, let me jump right in. I'll also say I'm going to make it very short so that we can get into questions because I know that's probably something that can be really constructive for people. But the lengthy 3-hour deposition on a lot of this materials you can review and listen to on the Kerry Cassidy Project Camelot interview that we did that's on the website, armypsyop.wix.com/Scott Bennett. If you want to go up there and listen to it, you'll get more of the legal 3-hour deposition of every detail. But I won't go into that here because of time and getting into questions. So let me jump right back in and say, when I went down to Tampa to do counterterrorism threat finance operations, I went in, I started digging around, I started writing reports, I started doing my job and doing it very effectively, doing it to attack a problem. I was looking into it like a surgeon, looking to heal a body and kill an infection. Well, to make a long story short, after tipping over some apple carts and ruffling feathers and writing reports and making public notice and raising my hand and making suggestions, I found myself stopped at the front gate, accused of a DUI that was later thrown out because there was no blood alcohol in my system. It was a complete false charge, a false entrapment. And I was taken at gunpoint onto base, interrogated for like 8-9 hours in a car, and then taken into a jail cell, and then released and banned from base under the accusation of a DUI suspicion and then an invention of my base housing not being cleared on paperwork. Nonsense. I mean, long story short, I then was banned from base, and Booz Allen Hamilton fired me. Dov Zakheim called me and wrote me a letter the next day and fired me without any explanation, just simply saying, because you've been stopped at base, we're suspending your clearance and you're being terminated. And I immediately thought, this is bizarre and crazy, but I also thought maybe it's a training exercise. Maybe they're testing me to see my loyalty, my abilities, my strength, my fortitude. because I was expecting to be deployed as a military officer. I had a top secret clearance. I was going to go over to the Middle East and do all sorts of operations. So I thought this was a test. Everything is a test. Well, I took it like a man, and I wrote it through. I went back to Washington expecting to be briefed that, all right, you've passed, and nothing happens. Next thing, we had the Don't Ask, Don't Tell report, and I filed a report that changing this policy would incite certain terrorist activities and terrorist inflammations and radicalism. And 1 month after submitting that report, I received an indictment letter. And that indictment letter was from the Civilian Justice Department of Justice, Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer, and they had accused me of making a false statement on a housing form, wearing my uniform improperly, and not having my guns in a gun safe registered properly on base paperwork format.
So basically trumped up BS.
Yeah, complete BS. The first time in the history of the United States an Army officer has ever been charged with things like that. So that's, again, why I thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was a test. I thought there's no way. There's no charges here. But to make a long story short, I go back down to Tampa to address these in a court of law. The attorneys I had, one of them was David Shalala, who was the nephew of Donna Shalala, Clinton's Secretary of Health and Human Services, and another guy named Craig Huffman, both of whom had been prior military JAG attorneys. Well, I get down there, and expecting to be fully briefed, all these charges thrown out. Instead, they never put me on the stand. They never put one piece of documentation on in the record, and never put on a defense. Simply invented some silly, statement that I wasn't guilty of anything. Well, the prosecutor had also raised that I had dressed up in a police uniform, and they got this affidavit from Wackenhut, which is a CIA affiliate, and all these funny things started happening. Next thing I know, I'm found guilty in a civilian court of law of military violations and thrown in prison.
Completely unheard of.
Prison. So the first time in the history of the United States, a military officer is thrown into a civilian prison for things that he was doing on base in uniform as part of his military duty. And 5-6 months later, after a journey through hell, I find myself sent up to Pennsylvania and they gave me a sentence of 36 months. Instead of 0 to 7 months, they enhanced me to 36 months, which again is unheard of. So I go to Pennsylvania, and make it real simple and short, this is a camp full of engineers, financiers, lawyers, doctors, white collar guys.
Talent.
And I find some of the most brilliant men you could ever meet, some of whom V has already talked with, who will confirm all of this material, all of the story, as being truth. And these men were, brilliant. I'd give my life for them. But one of the men that I met was Brad Birkenfeld. Brad Birkenfeld was the UBS Swiss banker who came over to the United States and disclosed to the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations that Union Bank of Switzerland had been funding terrorism, had offshore bank accounts, had all sorts of tax evasive activities, and
Scott, you there? Scott? I think,
yes, I'm here. Are you here?
Oh, yeah. I don't know what happened to your phone, man.
Okay.
But this is where you found Brad Birkenfeld, the legendary Swiss bank whistleblower.
Yes. So Brad and I sat down, and we'd met on the bocce court, and it was sort of a divine intervention moment, and we started talking, and he told me his story. And I said, Brad, you're telling me you came over to the United States after being targeted by the CIA, you ran to Holder, you ran to the Department of Justice, you ran to the Senate, and all of your Swiss bank account information, 19,000 accounts, actually closer to 24,000, you brought to the United States and tried to get to the military, the intelligence community, and the Congress to act on, and no one did anything? And Brad said, Scott, no military officer, no intelligence officer ever came to me and asked, or was I allowed to discuss with them, any of this Swiss banking information. So I said, well, I was looking for you down at U.S. Central Command. You were the goose that laid the golden egg and that I had been searching for. So it seems that I found you here in a prison. So let's start the conversation. Well, in over 6 months, Brad brings out all of his documentation, all of his account information, all of his case information, and we go through it. And for the next 6 months, I discover that Brad Birkenfeld's intelligence information bank accounts were absolutely essential to our counterterrorism threat finance military and intelligence operations, and yet he had never been allowed to disclose it to the military, and the military and intelligence community had never approached him and never asked him for any of this information, despite the fact that Senator Carl Levin, Senator John McCain, Senator Tom Coburn, all of these guys had heard Birkenfeld's material, had heard his testimony, and neglected to give it to the military. Barack Obama was also on that Senate Permanent Subcommittee at the time. So Brad and I discovered all of his material, got in touch with his lawyers. I introduced myself. One of his representatives was Jesselyn Raddick. Jesselyn Raddick is also now Edward Snowden's attorney. Well, she knew and wrote Brad Birkenfeld's Wikipedia page, had Cohn and Colapinto, his lawyers in Washington, D.C., also joined with the Whistleblower Center, had all put this operation together for Brad. Well, we put together a letter and a package for General James Mattis at U.S. Central Command, in which Brad and I disclosed General Mattis, all this material relating to terrorism and Swiss banks has been killing service members, killing contractors, killing European military members in Afghanistan, in Iraq, killing European contractors. So the United States service members and European allies have been killed or maimed or grievously wounded by weapons and terrorist activities that are being financed by the Union Bank of Switzerland, Credit Suisse, and a variety of other European and Middle East banks, that Brad Birkenfeld has essential intelligence materials that you need to see. Brad was previously prevented from discussing any of this by Kevin Downing and Kevin O'Connor. Those are two, this is all coming to me from Brad, those were two attorneys at the U.S. Department of Justice who originally charged and incarcerated Brad. They also prevented him from discussing any of this material. But no one could stop me from discussing it because we met accidentally, and all this material was coming to me from him. We then wrote the letter to General Mattis, and Brad Birkenfeld delivered it. He got out of prison on August 1st, 2012. Now, it's significant to note that on July 17th, 2012, 2 weeks before Brad got out, the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations and Homeland Security had published a report that identified HSBC and a few other banks and their specific roles in counterterrorism, financing, and money laundering. However, in the Senate, and in the Senate report, they never mentioned once any material relating to Union Bank of Switzerland or Brad Birkenfeld, which is huge because he basically came to the Senate with a briefcase full of account information, full of cell phone numbers, full of addresses, full of secret hotels, full of every inside information that an intelligence officer could use to track down the money, the terrorist finance accounts in UBS and every other Swiss bank overnight. Overnight, we could have tracked down and stopped these money sources and dried it up in an instant. So the Senate had published this report. I didn't discover the Senate report, I might add, until a couple of days ago, because being in prison, you don't get access to any of this material. So I just discovered this, and I'm just reading through it. So it's very fresh. But this report originally came out in 2012, on July 17th. Brad got out 2 weeks later. 1 month after he gets out, he's suddenly, and after that letter is sent to General James Mattis at U.S. Central Command, Brad is paid $104 million, and he goes completely silent and disappears.
Got
Immediately after that.
So they paid him some shut-up money and told him to go away.
That's the only conclusion, really, that you can make. We'll pay you in gold, or we'll pay you in lead, and you'll be dead. Well, they paid him in gold, and he went quiet. And I think his lawyers were instrumental in shutting him up as well. Now, I know what I know, which is when Brad and I sat down and talked about this, he said, Scott, I'm going to go back in front of the Senate, I'm going to demand a hearing, and I'm going to pull you in to say this man knows everything about how the military and the intelligence community should have used my materials. And had he been given these materials, him and his team at Booz Allen Hamilton, supposedly managed by Dov Zakheim, could have shut down all of these terrorist accounts. But he didn't get my material because I was prevented from giving him these materials. And you, Senator Levin, never gave the Armed Services Committee people and the military people this information as I requested. That was Brad's plan, is to have a second hearing where all of this was brought out, and I would be pulled in simply as an advisor from a military perspective. That never happened. When that didn't happen, I felt obliged as a military officer to report what I had been given by Brad, what I had discovered, and I compiled a 15 to 20 page report to General Jeff Jacobs, commander of U.S. Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations Command, who was my immediate commander as a PSYOP officer under the 11th PSYOP. I wrote General Jeffrey Jacobs, and in a detailed report I said basically, sir, material has come to me that's essential to our mission. It can help stop service members from being killed. It can help stop contractors from being killed. It regards to Swiss banking finance operations, and you need to look at it. It's absolutely critical. The material has come to me from the Swiss banker himself, and all of his WikiLeaks and all of his account information and all of his supportive documentation indicate a variety of things. One very interesting thing was that in Switzerland, Brad had been approached by the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, to turn over to them and work for them as an economic asset to give information on Swiss banking. He was lured into a DUI situation, taken to a bar in Switzerland, got drunk, stopped at a DUI stop, and put into a Swiss jail. Immediately, Brad told me, and he told others this, that V has talked to, and will confirm this. Brad was approached the next day by a guy walking into the cell who flashed a CIA badge and got him out of prison, and then approached and started the discussion with him. Well, immediately following that, Brad flew over to the United States. I think he sensed that there was something mysterious afoot and tried to turn over all of his material to the Department of Justice. Now, it's very significant that Brad was approached by the CIA in Switzerland because one other person was in Switzerland at the time that saw this operation and has reported this operation to Glenn Greenwald in The Guardian. And that person is Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden was an intelligence analyst working for the CIA in Geneva, Switzerland, and in his report to Glenn Greenwald in June of 2013 reported that the Swiss banker had been targeted by the CIA, and it was a turning point for Snowden. He saw the manipulation and the skullduggery and the corruption and how they were abusing the Swiss banker, and that supposedly had turned him and started making him cause a second thought.
Got it. Scott, let me ask you a question. What are some of the key pieces of information that stood out to you when you started putting Birkenfeld's information in combination with yours? What started to alarm you where you said to yourself, holy crap, the Republicrats and the Democrats are the same two wings on the same dragon? When did that epiphany occur?
Well, it happened instantly because I'm in prison, but I'm still a military officer. And anyone who's a military officer recognizes you don't just take off your hat and abandon your oath to the country and the Constitution. It's in your blood. It's in your character. It is in your entire being to defend your country. And that means to sniff out and hunt down bad guys and opportunities and any potential intrusions or attacks on your country. As a military man, you're always on the prowl for attackers. So I'm in prison, but my psychology is I'm still serving my country. I may be here in a different location. This whole thing may be a scam and a screw-up, but I'm not serving the military. I'm not serving Congress. I'm serving the people of the United States. I'm serving my hometown community, my family, my extended family. So that is what grounded me in in keeping on with my mission. And my mission had been to track down terrorists and their money supplies. And when Brad Birkenfeld came to me, he said, Scott, this is who I am. I'm the Swiss banker who brought over to Carl Levin in the Department of Justice 19,000 bank accounts and everything you could possibly imagine that relates to terrorist bank accounts and their operations and their money laundering vehicles and their 501c3 instruments and their organizations and their Middle East networking hawalas and everything else. I'm bringing all that information to the Department of Justice, to the Senate, expecting them to give it to you as a military officer, expecting to give it to you, the military intelligence organ that tracks down terrorist money operations. And he said, and I asked him point blank, I said, Brad, are you telling me never, not once, did anyone in a military uniform or an intelligence uniform ever come to you and say, we need to use your information, tell us how it applies to terrorist financing? And he said, Scott, never once, not ever did any military person ever contact me about any of this material. So it's impossible for anybody in the military or the Congress or any intelligence community to try and lie and say, well, we looked at Birkenfeld stuff or we talked to him or we did that. No, they didn't. Brad told me point blank, eye to eye, no one ever approached him and talked to him. That's when the flag went up. I knew right then and there this was either a serious lack of intelligence sharing or a cover-up, and it needed to be examined and exposed. It needed to go to the military commanders to utilize. It was actionable intelligence from a military point of view. You could use this intelligence and implement it into our missions, and the Congress also needed to implement it in order to build policy solutions around. Now, I sent that report to the military, to General Jeffrey Jacobs. I also sent it to over 100 congressmen and senators on the intelligence committees, the armed services committees, the foreign relations committee, the judiciary committee, the homeland security committee, the government oversight and reform committee, the banking committee, every senator and congressman under the sun that, I can list their names.
And of course, they all stonewalled you, right?
Every single one. Not one single congressman or senator or military official ever responded to my information.
Right, and also major media, probably you try to go to them and they probably stonewalled you as well and tell you, oh yeah, we'll interview you, and never even showed up, correct?
I probably spent about $500 in mailing stamps and envelopes because I sent it to every media asset you could imagine. I sent it to everybody at Fox News. I sent it to CNN, to 60 Minutes, to CBS, to NBC, everybody. The Fox News, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly, Greta Van Susteren, Monica Crowley, Chris Wallace, Britt Hume. Everybody at Fox News knows about this. I've also subsequently sent it to RT, to Abby Martin, to her assistant, Manuel Rapolo, to Guyan Chikayan, all of those people. None of them have responded. They initially responded by, hey, we heard you have a whistleblowing report in a story. Please tell us what it is. And then I sent them the material, and I never heard back from them. No one has responded. They've dropped it like a hot potato. One of the most damning exhibitions of treachery or cowardice was Michael Isikoff. Michael Isikoff from NBC News had come up to interview me, thinking that they were going to do an interview on a Booz Allen Hamilton contractor who was in jail, just like some of these other contractors who had gone off the reservation.
Sure.
And he came into an entirely different story. He came up and met with me, and I said, this whole thing that's happened to me was a complete setup and a scam, but let me tell you what I've discovered since I've been here in Schuylkill Mountainous Resort. I've discovered the Swiss banker and 19,000 bank accounts that terrorists are using to fund our terrorist activities against our troops, and I've filed this up the chain of command. I've filed it up to all the congressmen and senators, and no one has done anything.
Right.
Please report this, Michael Isikoff. He came up with a guy named Tom Hamburger from the Washington Post. Mm-hmm. And I sat down for 2 hours with them and gave them all of this material in writing, all of my reports and letters. They turned white, their jaws were open, and they walked out, and they never reported a single word about this. And they never returned any of my documents that I gave them.
Right.
So that's obviously, there's something real funny about that.
Well, it's pretty obvious, Scott, that none of these guys will ever bite the hand that feeds them. These sold-out military punks who are going against the oath of protecting the United States Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, have sold out to these cronies who are behind the scenes, and these media guys as well. I mean, it's a concerted effort to make sure that this information does not come out. I mean, am I right in saying that?
Well, you're absolutely right, and you know it's fascinating. This is a chess game that we've already won. We've already taken the queen. We've already defeated these pettifoggers, these manipulators, these congressional criminals. It's just a matter of making the right moves. Now, what I mean by that is all the people listening to your show, and especially the military people who are used to the whole military character, all they need to do is print out the letter and send it to their member of Congress and to the media. Simply say, it's already been written, simply affirming these reports, affirming this material, and it can be as simple as, it's come to my attention that Scott Bennett has filed a whistleblowing report as a military officer exposing Swiss banks funding terrorism. Given the terrorist banking that is being sued right now in New York, this is obviously an important issue. It's also come to my attention that you as a congressman have done nothing about this. You've received these whistleblowing reports from Lieutenant Bennett, and you've done nothing. Members of the military have been killed because of this. It's been lingering since 2012. For the last 2 years, this issue has never been handled or anything done about. So everyone listening to your show can put these members of Congress on notice by saying, I know about this report. I know that members of the military have been killed. I know that UBS is funding terrorism. And I'm telling you, Congressman, Senator, that I know. Now, if 10 people listening to your show called a congressman's office and said that staff member would run to the congressman's office and say, I just got 10 guys telling me that they know about a Swiss banking terrorist report that you've got and you've done nothing about. We're in serious trouble. Now, if 100 people did it, it would be even more outrageous. And these people will quickly run. Once they know they've been exposed and people listen and understand this, it's very easy to win.
And folks, let me tell you something. What Scott's referring to about a Swiss bank being sued, guess who it is? It's UBS. They're being sued by several victims' families, okay, in Israel, who have suffered at the hands of terrorists. They've did their due work, and they found out that a lot of these terrorist operations are being funded by UBS. And UBS is the bank that Scott has uncovered with those 19,000, 24,000 some odd accounts, him in Birkenfeld. But we all know, not too long ago, it was Wachovia who was funding the Sinaloa and Los Zetas drug cartels in Mexico and running the money laundering operations for the drug cartels. All of them are dirty. Do you get this? In other words, they've outsourced your jobs. They stole your money. They decimated your mortgages. They've created fraudulent financial instruments in Wall Street. They've sent your sons and daughters, excuse me, to go bleed in a far-off battlefield somewhere. And then on top of that, they're collapsing your economy, all the while laughing at you. And this is your best chance right here, this petition. And I also urge a lot of my European clients, a lot of my European listeners, sign that petition. How many of your sons and daughters have died on ridiculous NATO spelunking events all throughout the world because of keeping this false empire up and alive? Scott, I'm sorry to do that, man, but go ahead and continue. Give us a little bit more of the details of that you've uncovered.
let me give you, so everyone has this to write down, because this is the important thing: naming names and getting everybody in the light, and giving you, the listener, the material that you can take and write and demand action and say, I've got proof that you're complicit in these unconstitutional and even treasonous crimes. Let me name the recipients of this Swiss banking terrorist finance report that Birkenfeld and I have sent since September 25th, 2012. And they have done nothing. Not a single person has responded. General Martin Dempsey, Chairman, Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Pentagon. General Ray Odierno, Army Chief of Staff, the Pentagon. Lynn Halbrooks, the Inspector General, Department of Defense, the Pentagon. Representative Mike Rogers, Chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Senator Dianne Feinstein, Chairwoman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Howard Buck McKeon, Chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. Now, let me just add, I have been trying and in contact with Howard Buck McKeon's staff and telling them I've been writing them and sending them reports as a military officer, and they have stonewalled and ignored me. So Howard Buck McKeon is a major figure. Representative Duncan Hunter, House Armed Services Committee. Senator John McCain, Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator Carl Levin, Senate Armed Services Committee. Now, Carl Levin is very significant because he was on the committee of the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations that originally heard Birkenfeld's report, and he was also the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. So he had both seats. He should have taken this banking material from his one committee and shared it with the armed services. He never did. Senator Carl Levin needs to be held to account for that specific action.
And Scott,
Representative Darrell,
he's another dual citizen, right? And he's about to, I think, he's about to retire, I believe.
Yeah, but you know what? Retirement can't exclude these people from treasonous activities and crimes against the Constitution, and held to account. I think Nuremberg showed us a little bit of that, and some of these people need to be similarly disciplined.
And I think that's one of the reasons why he's trying to get out of Dodge as quick as possible.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons Eric Holder is quick so fast. Eric Holder has left the Department of Justice because I think he sees a lot of this stuff starting to come close to him. By the way, let me just put out a quick part. Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer worked for a law firm called Covington & Burling in Washington, D.C. Covington & Burling represented Union Bank of Switzerland. Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer prosecuted Birkenfeld and gave him 40 months in prison because of their previous client, Covington & Burling and UBS. Make no silly shenanigans about it. This was a conflict of interest at best and a severe abuse of government authority at worst. And Lanny Brewer has since gone back to Covington & Burling, and Eric Holder may try and sneak back. Michael Chertoff of the Homeland Security Department has gone to Covington & Burling. So this is a major law firm in Washington, D.C. that represents Swiss banks, UBS, and they prosecuted Birkenfeld, which is all exposed in the WikiLeaks cables. And Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, also coordinated with the Department of Justice to persecute Birkenfeld and throw him in prison. That's all in the WikiLeaks cables, which people can review at their own leisure. Let me jump right back into the naming lanes of the list. Representative Darrell Issa, Chairman of the Government Oversight and Reform Committee. Representative Jason Chavez, Chairman of the House Subcommittee on National Security, Homeland Defense, and Foreign Operations. Senator Charles Grassley, Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator Charles Grassley, Chief of Staff, was a guy named Dean Zerbe. Dean Zerbe wrote this whistleblowing law that got Brad Birkenfeld $104 million. I wrote to Senator Charles Grassley numerous times, pleading with him to contact me to debrief me on Birkenfeld's material. I assumed that Brad had been silenced, had been shut up, had been threatened, but that he still was going to proceed with the game plan, which is, Scott, get all this information out to the American public. So I took the ball and started throwing it up to Congress, hoping that they would call me back and say, Bennett, what have you got? What's this all about? What do you know about financing terrorism and Swiss banks and Birkenfeld's material? Tell us. Are lives being lost and soldiers being killed? That's what I was expecting. but not a single letter or phone call was ever returned to me. And I know they got them because I got token letters back from Rand Paul, from Jim Webb, but that was about it. Everybody else was dead, stone cold silent. That right there is the reason why all these people need to be immediately thrown out of office in a Night of the Long Knives sort of attack. Senator Charles Grassley, Representative Peter King from the House Committee on Terrorism, Senator Lindsey Graham, Senate Armed Services Committee, Senator Rand Paul, Senator Mitch McConnell, Representative John Boehner, Representative Eric Cantor, Representative Henry Waxman, Representative Mike McCall, Chairman House Homeland Security Committee, Representative Michelle Bachmann, Representative Dana Rohrabacher, Chairman House Foreign Affairs Committee. Dana Rohrabacher had written a report on terrorist financing in Investors Business Daily about how they're getting their money. I wrote Dana Rohrabacher back, pleading with him to contact me. Nothing. Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Orrin Hatch, Senator Pat Roberts, Representative Jeff Sessions, Senator Angus King, Senator Jim Risch, Senator Saxby Chambliss, Representative Ruppersberger, Representative Dave Reichert, Senator Kelly Ayotte, Senator John Thune, Senator James Inhofe, Senator John Coburn, General James F. Amos, and Major Avi Stone, who was my military attorney. I sent all of these people my report Shell Game and my whistleblowing report, Union Bank of Switzerland, terrorist finance, Birkenfeld case, and then another report, 3 whistleblowing reports. The last one being Follow the Money. Follow the Money was a very short, here's what's happened, here's what I discovered, here's what's Birkenfeld's material. All 3 of these whistleblowing reports. First one was September 25th, 2012. The next one was May 27th, 2013, right around when Snowden came out. And then after Snowden, the next one came out September of 2013, Follow the Money. And no one has responded to any of that material. So those are the facts. There's a few other representatives and senators who've gotten this, but I won't go into all the names yet. All this is documented. The opportunity that presents itself is all of this material will be brought back into a court of law in Florida, and all of these people will be brought in as part of the evidentiary record to confirm that Scott Bennett, working as a terrorist threat finance analyst, was illegally and unconstitutionally challenged, prosecuted, incarcerated in violation of the Constitution because of duties he was performing, specifically whistleblowing-oriented duties, in his capacity as a military officer and a defense contractor at U.S. Central Command. After being incarcerated, Bennett discovered Mr. Birkenfeld, and all of the material that he had been working on and whistleblowing about relating to terrorist finance was confirmed by Brad Birkenfeld's UBS documentation and materials. How in the world did these guys meet? How did this come together? Well, the faithful will say it was an act of God. They met in prison, and suddenly they completed each other's story, and Brad's documentation got into the right hands, because now they can be taken and put into a court of law and made part of the official record. Had this material from Birkenfeld come through any other means, it would have been labeled top secret and inaccessible. They would have buried it. But as it stands, because I went to prison, I met Birkenfeld, I got this material, and now I'm making it known. And that's how Greg and I connected, because he contacted me with a lot of his expert analysis in the mortgage banking crisis and a lot of the derivatives markets, and just following the money and putting together now where all of this has led and is leading to. I'll just close by saying, the people listening to your show, this is a very easy victory. All that needs to happen, look at it like a psychological warfare game. Every member listening to your show can write a letter and an email and send it to their member of Congress and their senator, and do it every week. And simply let them know that you know about this. You know about Brad Birkenfeld. You know about the Union Bank of Switzerland whistleblowing report. that describes terrorist finance accounts. You know that ISIS, right now, this war in the Middle East we're being drawn into, has been funded by UBS accounts that are going through all sorts of Swiss conduits. And you know that they have known since September 25th, 2012, and they have covered it up. They've ran away from it. And that is a breach of trust. They have violated their oath to the Constitution. Members of the military have been killed, maimed, wounded. Mothers and fathers of children who've served in uniform should be absolutely outraged that they have done nothing with this report, because there would be people alive today had they acted on this intelligence. But for whatever reason, they haven't. So I'll leave it at that, and happy to pick up wherever you want, V.
So, Scott,
V, can I make one linkage comment very quickly, V?
Yes.
Okay, here's the linkage, folks. This is not either a singular mortgage crisis issue or a singular military cover-up issue. It is not about the plight of Greg Morse in the legal system or of Scott Bennett in his individual story. There's a lot of details, but I don't want people getting confused in the myriad of details. Here is the linkage. Your money is stolen under the auspices of a fraudulent mortgage-backed security system. Second, the money goes through Wall Street, the DTCC&C. 3, the money gets transferred to the Federal Reserve. 4, do you believe that the money that went from the United States to these 24,000 or so accounts was carried over by a duck? No, it was wired from, in large measure, we are sure, we have to get the evidence to prove it. That's the reason for the congressional hearing. But the monies from the Federal Reserve were transferred to these various accounts in the Union Bank of Switzerland. What does that mean? 5, it means that since the dollar bills are not tracked by serial number, excuse me, it means that the quadrillions of dollars that were funneled through the DTCC that ended up in the Federal Reserve's account, of which the DTCC is the predominant controlling party of the Fed, it means that some or all of those monies, and we don't know. That's part of the research that we can't get our hands on because it's private to them, but only for a short while left. That money was transferred to the Union Bank of Switzerland, and there's no way for them to deny, there's no way for them to prove that the monies that went from the Federal Reserve came from a clean source and not from proceeds of the mortgage crisis. That's the linkage.
Yeah.
So the story here is twofold. That's the first one. The second one is we have voluminously documented all of the hundreds, over 500 communiques and distributions of our whistleblower package filed legally and accepted, as we covered last week, by the IRS, the SEC. We have sent that to over 500 people. You, the listener, know that we've only had 4 responses from the inspectors general, all of which say it's not within their jurisdiction. You just heard Scott say, I've got 129 letters that Scott has provided. They're all going up on the website. So there's more than that, but I've got at least 129 of them at this point. All of those have been denied. So what is the conclusion? It's not just about to whom we sent them, because I sent my whistleblower package to every senator, not just a few, every one of them. Then we sent it to all of the various major committees in the House, the obligation of which was to distribute that information to the remaining membership of the lower house of Congress. What does that tell you? It tells you that nobody wants to touch this. And I personally think that the 4 IGs that we mentioned last week, the FTC, the GAO, the DOJ, and the DOD, responded by administrative error, because now we have directly from the Inspector General's office for those agencies, which if you listen to Scott, you'll find out that some of the people who were involved in his incarceration and his very complex story was governed in whole or in part by a collection of those very same people, predominantly the DOD and the DOJ. So you have to stand back from the myriad of details so you get a global picture. That's the way we believe the money went there. That is what our evidence says. We need the congressional hearings to force these people like a bunch of cockroaches into the light so we can get the rest of the information, which without the congressional hearings we're not likely to get. And we need everybody's support. That's the linkage, and that's the meaningfulness of all this information.
And one of the things I want to tell people is this. When you look at history, when you look at U.S. history, you want to understand how these black ops nonsense and the collusion between finance and government and military and intelligence, how it all works is this. How do you think a family like FDR, the Roosevelt family, gained wealth? Well, they did it from the heroin trade. How do you think the Kennedys got their money? Well, they did it during Prohibition, and then after that was over, they cleaned up their images like a bunch of mafia dons, and they went prime time. This is how they work. They create these covert wars, these covert operations, the drug trade, and they launder their money and their wealth from that. Look at what happened with, if you all remember the Clintons. Remember Whitewater? What was that all about? That was about funding. That was about drug money coming back into Arkansas, funding business projects that the Clintons were involved with. That's what this is all about, folks.
Let me throw one thing out. So you had a very interesting point. And I need you'll know this from reading the material, but your listeners will find this interesting and useful as well. And it's something relating to the CIA drug operations and all that. When they released me from prison in February of this last year, and I have been for the last 2 years at a typewriter sending out letters every single day for the past 2 years. That's why this is a phone book size document of all sorts of materials. Everything is documented, and everything's uploaded to various parties who I trust. Should anything happen to me, it will continue, and even more information will be exposed. So everything has been properly secured and uploaded and shared as insurance, because we all know the type of people that we're dealing with on the opposite side. But when I was released from prison, they accidentally sent me to a halfway house. And when I was there, the halfway house, the Department of Justice, the Bureau of Prisons, are teaching courses to inmates to rehabilitate them. Well, you won't believe this, but trust me, it's true. When I got to the halfway house, one of the classes that they were teaching was called Deep Black, the history of the CIA drug operations and various assassinations and Mossad operations in the United States. So the department, and just think about that, the Department of Justice is teaching inmates who are getting out of jail that the CIA is running drug operations and assassinating military people who knew about this from Vietnam to the 80s, and the CIA was doing this in partnership with Mossad. That's what they're teaching American inmates who are getting out of prison. So if that's true, that the CIA has been doing this, then it certainly warrants a court action to review. If it's false, then of course they're brainwashing and trying to instill rebellion and violence in inmates and who knows what else, what other shenanigans. But it's very significant because I don't think the American public would approve and even believe that the CIA, the Department of Justice, is teaching this class. Now, I've shared it, and I've sent the syllabus, and I've included it in my court documents in Florida. So that, too, will be brought in to the record that the Department of Justice is teaching inmates this following syllabus. Deep Black, The History of CIA Drug Laundering Operations. That's an earth-shaking, plate tectonic moving discovery, because no one that I've shared it with can even believe that. But you know it, and everybody listening to your show knows it because they're intellectually sophisticated and have done their research.
Absolutely. And one thing I like to say, folks, all of this stuff is happening. It's us versus the globalists. That's the way you got to see it. It's the globalists that are using covert black ops money to finance and foment wars and terrorist activities that facilitate the destruction of the current nation-state system, which is what we're all based in. Okay? And they're trying to bring about a new world order, so to speak. And that's what we're fighting here. The whole thing is, folks, these guys use all sorts of front companies. And Scott, I'm sure you're probably seeing a whole bunch of shell companies that these guys have created to start funneling a lot of this money, a lot of these operations through. And, folks, that's what we're trying to get at here. These are the groups that you need to focus on. Okay, the fact that your hard-earned equity, your hard-earned money is being used against you. The global banking system has been weaponized. I wrote an article almost a year ago called Weaponized Banking. I did a whole series on it. In fact, I'm going to be writing a book on it. That's what the whole thing is about, folks. It's weaponized banking. It is extraction. And when you have whistleblowers like Scott come forward, it is about silencing them and their information. Well, we're down to the last 30 seconds. Anything else you guys want to say? You guys want to plug your emails, your websites? Go right ahead.
I'm done. Thank you, V. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm done too. Thank you for a great cause, and we look forward to continuing this fight and bringing out more as we analyze it and share it with you.
Thank you both. I want to thank both of you guys for being on, and I want to thank all the folks that are listening right now. Go to that website, saveourfamiliesandhomes.com, sign the petition, download the documents, look at the evidence, be active. Do not be an activist in the sense of just, you just want to talk about it or the salaciousness about this whole information, but be an actionable revolutionary. Take it to heart, folks. Make a difference. This is the only exploit you have. This is V, the Guerrilla Economist, and once again, support us on freedomslips.com. Click the Donate Now button. I want to thank my producer, Tom, for flying with me yet again tonight. Folks, thank you. We'll see you next week. Have a good night, and sign up for that archive. Join the archives, get yourself some seeds. Let's do this. Good night.
Listening to Revolution Radio.
Imagine. Just imagine.
Imagine a world
where every child and adult will have the opportunity to achieve their dreams.
I believe my inspiration is the answer. My inspiration is the greatest light.
The greatest energy.
It was born when the universe was sparked to life.
It's within everything.
My inspiration transforms pain into happiness
and failure into success.
My inspiration inspires lives.
It inspires lives.
It inspires human lives.
My inspiration is always shining like the sun.
But it doesn't mean that it's alive.
For centuries, my inspiration was in prison.
In prison.
In prison.
It doesn't belong there.
Its home is to be known to all people.
My inspiration is in trouble.
We are fighting for its life right now.
Right this moment.
This moment.
Millions all over the world want to go beyond their limitations.
Liberate their dreams and reach success. The failure of us all to be someone
is the biggest disease
of all time.
Each day our brothers and sisters die. Please help us to birth this inspiration to life.
And that will stop this disease.
Help us get the word out of our inspiration.
Help us.
Help us.
It's our shared belief for a better future beyond the horizon.
Let's write the future.
Heroism is here.
Stand up and grasp it.
Stand up.
Stand up and grasp it.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up for the dreams of all people.
This is Nighthawk from Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.